Welcome to Small Biz Life, Episode 6.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh my god, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life. Hello, as always, I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram, and I'm here with
Kristin Ingram.
Excellent.
And this is Small Biz Life. This week, we're going to start how we always do. We're going to start with what's in the news. Ooh. What do you got?
Well, being the kind of person I am, occasionally I like to Google good things for WordPress because we use a lot of WordPress installations. As I think a lot of people who are out doing internet business today are, it's an easy way to create a website to do what you want to. One of the things I find from talking to people who have their own WordPress setups, they're not technical. They only think about what you see when you look at the page. They don't think about what's behind it. So I bumped into an article from the Elegant Themes blog, which is the people who create a bunch of themes for WordPress. And they talk about what is the best caching software for WordPress sites.
Okay, what is caching? Caching
can mean a couple different things, but what this article is focusing on is essentially on the server, it will take essentially a snapshot of what a web page looks like, and it will store it. So if someone goes to a web page, the processors on the server don't have to put together the header and the footer and all of the content from WordPress. It just gives them the final result that already exists.
So it loads faster.
Which is a very big thing.
Yes, especially for mobile. And really, I mean, Google has made page loading part of their equation for how relevant your site is. Even before mobile, but it's even more important now with mobile. It has to be even faster. And this is a quick way to do it. And this article goes over several, and I'll give a quick shout out to the different caching software. And this is a pretty consistent list year to year. Because whenever I Google something for WordPress, a plugin, I'm like, WordPress, whatever the year is, and then the type of plugin I'm looking for. And you'll get good lists usually. And that's important because a lot of times there are plugins where they were really good plugins and then the person stopped updating them because the one thing with WordPress is it's open source, which means anybody can develop for it, but it doesn't mean that they consistently keep their plugins up to date.
And sometimes WordPress will bring functionality into the core software as well too, and it no longer is relevant after a certain year. Like, years ago, you might have needed special software to do permanent links, where you have the pretty words instead of strange blog/4/10, inside of there. It would actually replace it with words with your categories and things to make it more relevant to people. But over time, it grows, so the need for some of the plugins go away. But here's the list, the top list of caching software. It is W3 Total Cache, WP Super Cache, Quick Cache, Hyper Cache, and WP Fastest Cache. And each of these have their own strengths and weaknesses. However, the bigger takeaway I want people to think of is caching is a relatively technical idea. And when you download some of these, it's going to be very complicated and you might not truly understand it. And if you use a shared hosting service, the way their servers are set up are going to impact the way you should set up the software. So it can be complicated, especially when there are a lot of options in these software. So my suggestion is you Google the name of your host and take one of the caching softwares listed here, and you want to Google the host name and the caching software, and they will actually, at least I know HostGator does this, and I would assume most of the major shared hosting sites will. They'll tell you exactly how you should set it up to optimize it on their servers. So you'll get the maximum benefit from it.
Excellent. So that's the takeaways. You want to pick the one that works the best with your hosting company. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of hosting companies, they actually have their own recommendations for what you should use.
Yes. So where it's neat, find articles like this where it talks about good caching software, and some of them will have good benefit, but if you set up incorrectly on a server, it might have no impact, and you've just added overhead to your site whenever a request is called. So pick it wisely, and this is where Uncle Google comes in very useful.
Yes, Uncle Google is your friend. He knows all.
Yes, really knows all.
So my article this week might seem a little out of the range for small business, but we're going to tie it back. I like to see what the trends are with larger companies to see how that's going to trickle down into small business. So my article it's an article from September from CNBC. And it's called Uber Dealt Another Blow in Labor Ruling. So this is an article out of California. And essentially what's happening is Uber is a service that is kind of replacing taxis all over the country. You can sign up to be a driver for their service. You turn it on from your smartphone. It tells you where the requests are. You go pick people up and they pay you like you're driving a cab. Right now, all Uber drivers are subcontractors. But in California, there was just a ruling that the courts are allowing all of the Uber drivers to create a class action lawsuit against Uber because they want to be treated as employees instead of subcontractors. So the implication for that is that if Uber loses this case, they would be responsible for paying all of the Social Security tax, the matching Medicare tax. They'd have to pay unemployment tax for all their drivers. We're now talking about workers' compensation insurance. There's a lot of cost to having employees.
Yes.
It's very expensive to have employees. So the way that this trickles down to small business, California is a very large state. And typically when you have rulings in large states, they end up trickling down to the rest of the states. And my fear with this is that if Uber loses this case, states are going to start looking at relationships that small businesses have with their subcontractors. So for example, if you have a virtual assistant, if you have a regular bookkeeper that you're treating as a subcontractor, the states might start looking at those relationships and saying, no, this should be an employee for your business, not a subcontractor. So I highly recommend, following the news to see what's happening with court cases and with IRS cases with large businesses, because eventually that's going to trickle down to you and me.
Or you could just listen to our podcast and Kristin will tell you what she finds when she does it.
That's true. So if you want the links to both of these articles, you can go to smallbizlife.com, click on episode 6, and we've got the links in the show notes.
Excellent. Now, there must be some form of a topic for today, or are we done already?
No, we're not done.
Oh, okay.
No. So we normally do a mailbag segment after the news. But I received this question from so many different people that we've decided to do an entire episode on it. Yes. People are really concerned with how to separate their business time and their personal time and not let their personal time seep into their business time or vice versa. This is something that women, I'm going to tag us out because I think we are much worse about this than men are. We have a habit that because we have a small business, we believe that this gives us flexibility. And that means the flexibility that if, our kids need us to watch our grandkids, or if somebody needs us to run errands in the middle of the day, we are the person that does that. And I think naturally as women, we're the caretakers, right? So we take on those responsibilities.
I just figured you just tell them to pound sand because you're working.
Yeah, that's what men do. That's not what women do.
Oh, okay.
See, that's what men do. And I think men have the opposite problem where they let business creep into their personal time.
That's probably true.
Right? Mm-hmm. So like, I just need to get one more thing done, so I'm going to be 20 minutes late to dinner.
And you're an hour late, and food is cold and you're like, why is my food cold?
Yeah. And then your wife is not a happy camper. So we kind of wanted to address this from both sides and how to create boundaries. So
it's like a he said, she said episode.
It is.
Excellent. Ooh, I'll play the he.
Oh, that's good. I appreciate that because I was going to play the she. Very so good. That's helpful. The questions that I get are, how do I create more time for my business? How do I stop myself from interrupting my business time? How do I prioritize my time? Okay, those are the most common. And then, a lot of it comes in the form of complaints. Like people don't understand that as a small business owner, I have to work during the day. And this is an issue that I've had, in the past. People are like, well, you're not really working.
Yes.
Like, no, really. And part of it, I think, especially if you have an online business, people don't understand really what that entails.
Well, you're just on Facebook anyway.
Right. You're just on Facebook or you're just playing around on the web, So come to lunch or, I need help with this or whatever. And people don't really understand that you have things you have to get done. Let's look at this from the male perspective because men seem to be much better about this. Mm-hmm. How do you say no?
It's actually one sound. It's a syllable. It's called no. I can't do that right now. It's really that simple. You just say, no, I can't do that right now. I'm working. Sorry. How about later?
See, I think for women, it's not that easy, because you're like somebody needs my help. And if I say no, then they're going to be angry and they're going to be upset. And, I need to help people. I need to help everyone. I need to do everything. So lately I've been reading this great book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And as I was reading this book, there was something that it floored me. Like I had to stop. And he says in the book, you can do anything, but you can't do everything.
You always look guilty when you tell me that part.
Well, the thing is, it's common sense, but yet I think as women, we've been told we can do everything.
That's right.
We just can't do it all at the same time.
Correct.
And I think that's the essential part. So one thing that's really helped me, and we talked about this a couple episodes ago, my master schedule helps me a lot.
Yes, and both of us.
The premise of a master schedule is blocking off time to get certain tasks done. Mm. And in my master schedule, I even schedule all my personal time. Mm-hmm. So that way my business doesn't bleed into my personal time.
Yes.
So when somebody calls me and says, hey, can you do something for me?
You can tell them when you're available to do it for them.
Right. And I can also say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm booked that day. Mm-hmm. Because technically you've made an appointment with yourself, right? To get things done for your business or, to run errands or to go grocery shopping. It's funny because when we make appointments with other people, we keep them.
Yeah.
But when we make appointments with ourselves, we don't.
Correct.
And there's something wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. I think part of this, too, is being able to understand the difference between a need and a want from someone as well. Because there are times where there are emergencies and you have to drop something that you're doing now. But the thing you have to do when you do that is sit there and look back to your free time and go, okay, what I'm doing now was important enough to put down on paper, make an appointment with myself. So if I leave work now or stop working now because I'm working at home to go, like say with you to an appointment because you want me there, that's great. And I would do that for you. But I have to sit there and go, okay, but you know what? Thursday from 7 to 9, I'm now having to do this task.
Right. And so what I typically do with my schedule, even when if I'm scheduling my own doctor's appointments, I actually have time set aside on Friday morning for errands and appointments. Mm-hmm. And that's when I try to schedule those. So I'm not taking breaks in the middle of the day when I'm working on something and I'm hyper focused to go to the doctors or to physical therapy. I'm trying to schedule that at intentional times during the week when I've blocked off time for those type of activities. And for me, it's made me a lot more productive.
And I think there's another important thing with boundaries that can help an individual be honest to themselves. When you're in an intense work block period, which I think Kristin and I both do when we're working on our side business, and I do it at my day job as well too, is, I'll work a block of time for 25 minutes and then I'll take 5 minutes off and just kind of shake my head out, and then I'll get back down and I'll focus on the exact next task. And in that, I shut off my phone so I do not hear ringing. And I'm sorry if it's an appointment, but it will have to wait for at least 25 minutes before I'll even look at to see if I have a voicemail. I will close down the browser of my web unless I'm using it, in which case I will only leave open the thing that I'm doing. Or like if I'm doing research, all of the research pages I'm doing, I won't have Facebook open in the background. I won't have my email open in the background. Those are the two worst things. If you have a chat service on, shut it off.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've been doing in the morning is I've been creating time to read. And so I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I actually turn it over so the screen is against the table so I don't see it light up.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've started doing, there's a Pandora channel that's called Classical Music for Studying.
And I will actually... For working.
Yeah, and it works great for working because it helps you stay focused. I find that if I listen to music that has words in it, then I start singing along and then I'm paying attention to that and not what I'm doing.
Okay.
That's a personal thing. So I found that, that kind of, there's been studies that classical music helps increase your brain activity and helps you focus. So I've been doing that.
Yeah, I think that's good too because it helps break up the background noise. So if you were working at the Ingram household, there might be random sounds and crashings all throughout the day. We're not sure. We believe it's ghosts that live in the house. At least I think it's possibly ghosts in the house that knock things over occasionally.
It could be cats.
Not kitties.
Yeah, it's probably cats.
I think it's probably cats.
Yeah.
So Kristin thinks it's cats. I'm still sticking with ghosts. Our ghosts are small, so they're very unlikely to really destroy the house, even though you hear the sounds and you go walking around when you hear them, and sometimes you find nothing and you're like, I have no idea what just happened. And other times you'll find a knocked over, lamp or something that the ghost pushed over. So the thing to keep in mind is, that stuff will be there, and maybe they did even break something. If you don't have little kids going around the house, it's not important at the moment it happens.
Right. Let's look at this from the male perspective and somebody who works full time, right? Because I think a lot of small business owners are trying to transition out of their full-time job. So they're trying to do that, the juggling between the full-time job. So with everything that you have going on, how do you create boundaries between work, your side business, and then your personal time?
One of it is phone discipline. There are certain things, even though I have the option to do, I do not do them at certain times. I don't engage in Twitter directly unless I'm on break at work. Like I said, usually most of the day, my phone has the sounds turned off to where it's not even vibrating. I will sit there, and when I go out for a break or I'm at lunch, I'll look at my phone and I'll see if there's anything I need or want to respond to. But outside of that, I stay away from the phone. And same thing for work too. It's like I will shut down. We use Outlook at work, which I'm not necessarily a huge fan of, but it's a necessity where I work. And that gets closed down when I'm working. I will check that in those little 5-minute breaks. So when I'm not allowed to take a break, but I'm taking a break, I'll open up my Outlook. I'll see, did any important emails come through? I can see a light on my phone at work to know I have a voicemail or not, because the ringer on my phone at work also gets shut down. Nothing I do is so vital where there can't be a 25-minute, wait, for a response. Even though it might seem important when you get the message, and it might change my priorities for the rest of the day, I do it. So, I try when I'm working to stay as focused on the task at hand as possible. That, and I like to have a list of the next tasks I need to get done. And I always keep a list of the goals that I'm trying to currently work towards in the different projects I have. Now, I also always maintain a list of very quick tasks that I have to get done. So let's say I start on a task in a 25-minute block. and maybe I've been working on it for the last 4 or 5 blocks and I get it done pretty quickly, I'll just go to my task list and go, what are my quick tasks that also need to get done? And I will look for what I'm working on. I'll say, okay, oh wait, I need to respond to this email, or I need to submit this paperwork, or I'll find a quick task to help finish out a block of time. Whenever I'm in those blocks, I have at least several things ahead I could go to when I get done with the thing I'm working on currently.
You know, I've had a lot of people ask me, how do you get started on days that you just are not motivated to do anything? And I think having that list of quick tasks, because it's kind of the same.
Win early.
Yeah. Right. It's kind of the same thing as like when you pay off debt using the snowball method.
Yeah.
A quick win helps get you motivated to keep going.
It's an awesome analogy. And I agree completely, because that's it. It's like, oh, I don't think I can do anything today. And then it's something small, but it gets you going.
Right. It's like you can knock that, 5 or 10 minute task off your list and you're like, all right, let's go. Yeah, let's go tackle something else.
My old strategy was to cuddle with Ra on the couch, and that didn't seem to work very well. So I would usually just fall asleep.
That's a good strategy for napping.
Yes.
That is not a good strategy for getting things done. So, having that list and having times associated with it really helps.
And I think a big thing too is when I put my master schedule together, for the very core important things, I have specific time for that, so I know it's like, and we talked about this a little bit before, there's an hour a day for writing, no matter what. And sometimes I will do more writing than that because, the author side, there's writing involved. But, you need, that ball should always be moving forward, either doing rewrites or researching the next project or actual writing. That all needs to come, and that always needs to be moving forward for that business I'm working on.
Right. And, I think you said something really important about turning off your phone, turning off your ringer, not checking your email every time one comes in.
And do not check it when your brain is peaked. Just leave it closed completely.
Yeah. So one thing, what you're doing when you're constantly checking your email and you're constantly checking, you're constantly answering the phone, you are letting other people set your priorities. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing where if somebody calls you and says, hey, do you want to go to lunch? Or, hey, can you watch my kids? Mm-hmm. Or, hey, can you run an errand for me? You're letting other people set your priorities. Mm-hmm. And so if this is something that you're really not good at, saying no to people, turn off the ringer on your phone. Put your smartphone on Do Not Disturb. One thing that I do, like if I'm doing like webinars and stuff, I unplug the phone.
Yeah.
And, and hopefully I remember to plug it back in. But I will try to create a distraction-free environment. And I know that if I'm having a day where I don't want to be working and I'm likely to say yes if somebody calls, then I try to avoid the ability for the person to be able to reach me.
Yeah, because one, they're not going to pressure you into doing things for them if they can't talk to you. They're going to move to the next person on the list who's going to help them. Very rarely are any of these things so dire that they need to be dealt with immediately. And if they are, they're going to try and contact you in multiple different ways. The landline in the house is unplugged, so they can't leave you a voicemail there. So they call and they leave you a voicemail on your phone.
One thing that you can do with the Do Not Disturb settings on your phone is if you do have, like, say you have a sick parent or you have a sick child, or say your child's in school, you can set certain numbers to bypass the Do Not Disturb. So, you may want to allow, the number for your kid's school to come through in case your kid is sick and you need to go pick them up, but you block everything else. Yeah. So there's technological solutions to help you say no. Mm-hmm.
Because most of the time it is, someone just happens to be in the area and they want to go to lunch, and it's going to take 2 or 3 hours out of your day. And it does not push your business forward, and it's during your work day. You can't do it unless, once again, you're good enough with the flexibility in your time, and you have the ability with your family to be able to shift personal and work time around. And you're not giving up the best part of your day, the time that your brain is at its peak. You should always try and hold that towards your business.
Right. And one thing that we can do is we can set expectations with our friends and family. So our friends know that if they invite us to something the day of, it is likely we are going to say no. Yeah. Typically we like to book things, with a week's notice so that we can get it into our schedule and retool everything. And our friends know that and they respect that. So, talk about those expectations with people. If somebody calls you up and says, hey, do you want to have lunch tomorrow? Say, well, you know what? My week is already fully scheduled. Let's look at next week.
Yeah.
Don't let other people change your priorities and give them expectations. That this is the kind of lead time I need if you want to get together. And I do that with my clients as well. Once I am in, Monday morning, I do not book appointments in that week because my week is already set. So if I need to meet with a client, I will book them into the next week. And my clients understand that. They know those expectations. And therefore, they know that if, they have to call me by Friday to get booked into, to see me Monday or Tuesday of next week. So it's not only setting boundaries with your family and friends, it's also setting boundaries with your clients. Because if your clients think that they can call you and you're going to run over there immediately, they are going to take advantage of that because you've set an expectation that you are available immediately. You're available all the time.
Or if they text you and you always respond as soon as they text you, and the one time you don't, they're going to complain to you like, what took so long?
Right.
And so, the thing is, for me in general, I don't respond to communications until they're needed to be responded to, or I have the time to respond to them. So in the afternoon, when I'm in my full day job, that's when I try and respond to emails because my brain isn't at its best at that point. It's kind of weak. And so I that's when you start getting that 2 p.m. sort of fatigue. And, that's a great time to respond to emails because you take a little bit extra time reading to make sure that they sound legible. But, usually the most impactful part of your day is not responding to emails. And I'm also thinking about this too. There's one huge caveat in what we're saying. You have to understand your business as well too. If your business is like, say, a suicide prevention hotline, obviously you need to keep the phone on.
Right.
But it would be that phone, not the phone that people would call you with your family and friends. So, if there's a work line where you're dealing with your customers, I would try and have a separate number than what your friends and family use. And so if the type of work you're doing has more immediate response, and there's stuff a lot less important than suicide prevention lines, but, let's say maybe you respond and go fix people's computers. That might be something that you would want to respond to as part of your business. Then you need the ability for them to contact you when you're doing other work.
Or if you do like emergency plumbing, emergency electrical, emergency heating.
There are lots of times that you do need that. But if you do have one of those certain types of businesses where you need to respond relatively quickly to people, keep that line separate.
For our phone line for the business, we actually use a company called Uma. And it's about, if you do the basic service, it's about $4 a month.
Yeah.
If you do, if you want to have like call forwarding and things like that, then it costs about, I think it's probably about $90 a year. So it's a lot cheaper than a traditional phone line. It rings right to the, to the phone that's plugged into it. We have the option to have it ring to our cell phones and we can turn that off. So we don't have to give people our cell phone numbers. So it's a nice option. It's an inexpensive option rather than trying to bring in, I'm seeing my clients paying $40 a month for phone service. And there's other things too, like Google Voice that you can use, which is what we use for the hotline number, right? Because it's not something we need to respond to right away.
Correct.
You kind of have to look at what your needs are, right? And pick the service that's most appropriate for you. When we're talking about saying no, the hardest no for me is when a potential customer calls. I had somebody reach out to me this week that wanted QuickBooks set up. And I looked at my schedule and I just said, I'm sorry, I have no time for the next 2 weeks. If that time frame works for you, great. If not, I completely understand. Yeah. And the person wrote back and said, no, I'd like to get it done right away. But if I need anything in the future. it was really hard for me not to say, well, I could, I'll come see you tomorrow.
Let me get rid of something else that I'm doing to do that.
Right.
And, if that's the way you're trying to make your money, it's not the best call normally. However, that is not your primary focus for your business. And where you like doing that kind of stuff and you enjoy doing it, it's a good way to supplement income. It needs to be treated as such.
Well, and the thing is, too, is that when you do that with a new client, you're setting the expectation that if a client calls you or emails you on Wednesday, you will go see them Thursday. Mm-hmm. And so unless that is the way that you want your business to operate, mm-hmm. you need to set proper expectations from day one.
Most definitely. And I think my hardest thing is you. There's very little I wouldn't drop for you, even if I should say no.
Well, and one thing that I do, though, to respect your schedule is, I will check with you before I book things. Mm-hmm. And I will, if I know what your master schedule is, mm-hmm. Like you're off every other Friday. Mm-hmm. So, I typically know like either Friday morning or Friday afternoon, I can book something for the two of us, but I try to give you one or the other. Yeah. To work on your stuff. Yeah. I try to respect that you can take some of that time to work on your business. And that's setting expectations, mm-hmm. right? We're very open with what our schedules are.
And she knows my weakness and she doesn't take advantage of it, which helps because it's easy to do that, especially with spouses, to sit there and go, well, I'm your wife. I'm your husband. I'm sorry. Could you make me a sandwich right now, Kristin?
No, we're recording.
Oh, Jesus.
Sorry, boundary. No. Say no.
We're joking a bit, but it's like we both do our best because I think, much like my biggest weakness is saying no to my wife, she has trouble saying no to me as well too. And we both try and respect that with each other.
And it's interesting because I've had conversations with people where, they're talking to a group of business owners about struggles they're having in their business and time. And I'll always say, have you brought this up with your significant other? And a lot of times they're like, no, I don't really talk about my business with my significant other.
Yeah.
Well, how do you expect your spouse or your kids to help you develop those boundaries if you don't talk to them about what you need those boundaries to be?
Because it's easy to cut yourself from outside distractions from beyond your household, beyond your immediate family by some of the things we've been talking about. But for the people you live with, that needs to be a serious discussion.
Yeah, there's a really good book by Dr. Henry Cloud. It's called Boundaries, and it's been out for a while. It is a fantastic book to help you look at the boundaries or the lack of boundaries that you've created in your life and helps you build them up. Yeah. Now, I'm going to put this caveat in there. If you are not a religious person, there are a lot of religious references in it. There are a lot of Bible quotes. I'm not a very religious person, and I read past them. It's a fantastic book. And even if you're averse to reading things with a little bit of religion in them, I still think it's a great book.
And one of the things I want to point out too is, in a household where people are experimenting and trying things, one of the important things to respect is when they call something a business, respect it as such. And this is almost a joke on TV now where, the wife says she has a business and the husband's like, oh, it's her hobby. Not true.
Oh yeah, there was a cable TV there was a cable company commercial, and and they're talking about how they need fast internet, and she's like, well, I have this, I sell something on the internet, and the husband's like, yeah, it's her hobby, and she's like, no, it's my business, and I could totally relate with that.
And the thing I think people have to keep in mind is, and it even might be small at that point, but if they're treating it as a business, and even if what you do makes more money, respect it and help encourage that behavior, because one, it'll help them support you in your endeavors as well too, and who knows what that might grow into.
Right. And I think the thing that helps is when you develop your master schedule, share it with your spouse, because if your spouse goes to a 9-to-5 job, they have a really hard time understanding what you're doing at home.
Because to them, they're leaving to go to work and you're at home.
Right, exactly. And, a lot of people are income focused. So while you're building your business, if you're not generating a lot of revenue, they might think, well, what are you doing all day? Why isn't the laundry done? Why aren't the dishes done? They don't understand the activities that you're doing to ramp up your business.
Oh, wait, you expect me to help you with the dishes and laundry after I've been working all day and you've been at home?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think sometimes too, from the other side, I think that there is that guilt that like, well, I'm here, and yes, I'm working on my business, but maybe I should get some laundry done, or I should get some dishes done. And
I make an argument. If you work in those hyper-focused blocks, there's nothing wrong in that 5 minutes to run downstairs and flop laundry over. But you have to respect that you can only work on it for 5 minutes. You have to be back at your desk when that 5 minutes is up, ready to go again.
Yeah, that's why when I'm doing the blocks, I like doing 50 minutes and then 10 because I've learned that I can empty the dishwasher in 10 minutes. I can swap over the laundry in 10 minutes. So I can be super focused on my business for 50 minutes and then take 10 minutes to do a task that needs to get done.
Well, for me, I think that's an individual thing. For me, I do both 50-minute blocks with the 10-minute breaks or 25-minute blocks. If I don't like what I'm doing, I have trouble focusing on it. And I can't focus for 50 minutes on email or following up in social media or blah, 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 blah stuff, as I like to call it. That's my technical term.
Well, what I'll do with blocks like that is I'll say, okay, I'm going to do 25 minutes of email, 25 minutes of social media, and then 10 minutes off. Or maybe I'll do 25, 10 in the middle, and then 25.
But see, I just need that 5 minutes. If it's a crappy block, to sit there and go, you know what? I need to build up the courage to move forward again in life and maybe do some more administrative work.
Yeah, administrative work is the worst. It really is. That's why you got to automate as much of that as you can.
Yes, that's another episode.
Yes. So this week's app of the week actually has a lot to do with what we talked about today when we were talking about creating tasks and setting time to those tasks. We actually use a task management system called Nosby. And one of the things I really like about Nosby, I've used other task management programs in the past. It works great on mobile. Like the mobile interface is fantastic.
Awesome.
It's really smooth. I've had issues with some other ones that we've used that the mobile interface was not so great. It's super fast.
It's a simple interface that's easy to pick up.
Right. It's really easy. It also does some amazing things if you want to be able to use them. So one of the things you can do is you can actually set a duration to your tasks. You can set a due date for your tasks and it'll actually interface with your calendar. So like if I have due dates for stuff, it'll actually show up on my Google Calendar. You can break things into projects. So you can add in, so I've got a project for Small Biz Life. I've got one for my CPA firm. I've got one for the university I work for. And it allows me to categorize things. It allows me to set in next actions, right? So I can say, all right, yeah, I may have 20 things in my to-do list, but I'm focusing on these 4 or 5, which is fantastic. I love that. You can set up tasks and put notes in there. You can link things from Evernote in there. One thing I absolutely love is if I say, okay, if I need to add 10 things to the resource page on Small Biz Life, inside the task, I can actually create a checklist.
That was one of the features I really liked about it and one of the other ones we used that I liked, you could create subtasks in tasks, but it just took longer. And this is just simple. You just add a thing and then you can just check them off when you're done. When it's all done, you're done with the task.
Yeah. So that's a really cool feature.
So it's an easy way to break down bigger tasks because it's always better the longer the task, even if it's really one task and say it takes you 2 days. And there are truths that some tasks might take you longer than others.
still look at benchmarks within there. So you can sit there and you can see progress for yourself. And that helps just moving you forward because you feel like you're succeeding. And also, like, if you're working in a more traditional job where you're reporting to people and they can say, well, how far are you done? Well, I'm 7 out of 14 tasks, so I'm 50% complete with what I'm working on for you.
And the nice thing it does, too, is that so when you create your next actions or you have actions in a project, if you set times for each one, you know, how the duration of how long you think it's going to take, it'll actually tell you it's estimated it's going to take you this long to finish all your next actions, or it's going to take you this long to finish this project.
Yes.
And I like that because a lot of times, like, I'll look at my list, for Small Biz Life, I'm always adding new things. And I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, there's like 30 things on this list. But to accomplish them all would take me 6 hours. And you go, oh, well, that's not so bad. All right, let's see how many of these I can pump through today.
And when you use these kind of software to help with task management, everyone has a little bit of strengths and weaknesses for time management. Know what your weaknesses are. And if it's the fear of the big list, something like what Kristin said might work for you, or making things next action so you're never looking at more than 5, and say next actions are the things I expect to get done today, or maybe for a week. Depends on how you structure your schedule. But always, have a way to look at a subset too, because the same way your email can disrupt you, seeing all of these other tasks might actually start sparking your brain onto something that you're not ready to work on yet.
Right. You might get really overwhelmed. And so that's why, when I'm going through and trying to figure out what my next actions are, I'll say, okay, I've got a 3-hour time block this morning. Let me find tasks that I can get done that are about 3 hours total.
Yeah.
And then I will select those and say, okay, so these are my 5 things I'm going to work on today. It's 2.5 hours. So that gives me my breaks every hour. All right, let's go.
Yeah. And if you perform a professional service in which you bill out time to people, I would always advise doing estimated times and tracking how long it actually takes you to complete tasks, because that will let you put together more accurate estimates for people as you move forward.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's give a second app then, since you mentioned that. There is a great free app online that's called Toggl. It's TOGGL.com. And I'll put that in the link to the show notes along with the link to Nosby. It's a really simple way to manage time, and you can manage more than one timer at once. So if you do get interrupted, you can stop one timer, start another one, and it really helps you keep track of where you're spending your time every day.
Yeah.
So excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to reach out to us on Twitter at SBL Podcast. You can go to smallbizlife.com to see links for everything that we talked about today. The books we talked about, the apps we talked about, the articles we talked about. It's all there on smallbizlife.com. Thanks so much. Have an awesome week. Thank you for listening to Small Biz Life. If you enjoyed the show, please take a few minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Stitcher. Please visit smallbizlife.com to view today's show notes, take this week's poll, join the Facebook community, follow us on Twitter, or submit a question for the mailbag. Support the show by checking the resources page or by going to smallbizlife.com/Amazon whenever you shop.
This was Small Biz Life. This was Small Biz Life.